Think back to your childhood or teenage years. You come home after school, boot up your old PC, open GoldSrc, and set up a local server just to run around, test out new console commands, or check out bullet spreads. You click start, choose a team, spawn, and at that very moment, something inside you freezes. Have you ever felt that strange sense of paranoia while on a completely empty GoldSrc 1.6 server? Why do horror movies filled with monsters, guts, and cheap jump scares only give us a slight jolt of fear, while launching a deserted map in a 20-year-old team-based shooter instantly triggers a primal, animalistic terror within us? You feel like someone is standing just around the corner, that someone is crawling through the vents on assault. You frantically turn at every rustle, raise your crosshairs toward the empty windows of the office, but there's no one there. And there can't be. After all, you're alone on the server.
This isn't just childish impressionability. It's a sophisticated trap for our psyche. It's the clash of the human mind with a broken digital reality, where the limitations of the old GoldSrc engine, sound positioning bugs, and the architectural phenomenon of liminal spaces create the perfect existential nightmare. Today, we'll dissect this fear and take a look behind the scenes of digital loneliness. To understand this fear, we need to turn to modern psychology and urban studies. In design and architecture, there is a concept known as liminal space. Simply put, it's a transitional zone, the space between point A and point B. These are the endless hotel hallways, airport waiting areas, empty subway cars at night, or school hallways during summer break. Our brains are evolutionarily wired to be very practical. It divides the world into two categories: lived spaces, where it's safe, there are people, and there's a social context, and transit spaces, which you simply have to pass through to get home or to work. Liminal spaces have no purpose of their own. No one lives in a hallway. No one has a picnic in a stairwell.
Now take a look at the GoldSrc maps. From a game design perspective, these are ultra-liminal zones. Every texture, every passageway, every archway on Dust 2, Aztec, or Assault was designed with a single purpose in mind: to serve as an arena for total, non-stop violence. They were created for the sound of a huge crowd's footsteps, for tactical maneuvers, for shouts into the microphone, and for dividing the world into us and them. The architecture of these maps is literally steeped in team-based conflict.
And when you remove people from this equation, the space breaks down. Cognitive dissonance sets in. Your mind subconsciously realizes this place should be teeming with life. Just a second ago, explosions were reverberating here, but all around is a dead, echoing void. In psychology, this triggers the uncanny valley effect, but as it applies to architecture, your subconscious interprets an empty shooter map as the aftermath of a sudden, instantaneous catastrophe. You don't just feel like a lone player on a server. You feel like the last surviving human in an extinct digital universe. And this sense of abandonment is the first brick in the foundation of our paranoia.
But why, for example, doesn't an empty map in modern GoldSrc 2 or some Call of Duty game inspire the same kind of panic-stricken horror as the good old 1.6? The answer lies in technology. Welcome to the technical inner workings of the GoldSrc engine. GoldSrc is a heavily modified version of the original Quake engine, released in the late 90s. By today's standards, it's primitive, and it's precisely its imperfections that create that very oppressive atmosphere. First of all, there's a complete lack of dynamic lighting. The lighting on 1.6 maps isn't calculated in real time. It's baked in during the map compilation stage by the developer. The sun is drawn in the sky, and the shadows cast by buildings and crates are simply dark, static spots rigidly nailed to the floor and wall textures. You could set off a dozen flashbang grenades here, but the geometry of the shadows wouldn't change by even a millimeter.
Second, the world of CS 1.6 completely lacks what game designers call microdynamics. In modern games, the world around you is alive. Grass sways in the wind, voluminous clouds drift across the sky, pixelated birds fly, and specks of dust swirl in rays of light. The world reacts to your presence. In Counter-Strike 1.6, the world is frozen. The physics engine remains in a state of clinical death until you click the left mouse button. The clouds are a flat, two-dimensional box, a skybox, stretched over the map. The trees are flat sprites. There's no wind here, no physics for small objects. The map isn't a living city or a military base, it's a frozen plastic model, a simulation of reality in which time has stopped forever. Your brain is terrified of this absolute stillness. In the real world, a complete standstill of all living things means death. And on an empty 1.6 server, you're literally walking through a digital graveyard where the only living, moving object is you. Architecture and visual emptiness are just window dressing. The real, subconscious terror begins when sound comes into play. The Counter-Strike 1.6 sound engine is a sophisticated, high-tech torture for your ears. At the turn of the century, when the GoldSrc engine was created, the advanced 3D audio we're used to today simply didn't exist. To simulate spatial audio, the game used early software-based echo algorithms, technologies like A3D or EAX. And on a completely empty server, these algorithms turn any map into a giant resonating tomb. Try walking into the tunnel on Dust, or the sewers on Militia. Every single step you take, every accidental press of a movement key produces a hollow, lingering echo. The sound wave bounces off the flat virtual walls and returns to you with minimal delay. Your own footsteps echo as if someone invisible were running alongside you, relentlessly following close behind, but falling silent the very second you stop. You can literally hear the physical embodiment of your loneliness. But the engine's biggest nightmare is a sound positioning bug known as sound panning. If you put on headphones, you'll notice that the background sounds on the maps, whether it's the ventilation in Assault, the dripping water in Aztec, or the opera in Italy, aren't tied to a specific point in space, but to flat, two-dimensional zones. Take a look. I'm standing in Italy. The moment I turn my head just a couple of degrees to the side, the sound of the opera jumps abruptly from one ear to the other. Our brains, honed by millions of years of evolution in the real world, can't make sense of this digital glitch. To your central nervous system, such a sudden, unnatural jump in sound is a danger signal. Your subconscious interprets this glitch as a sudden rustle behind your back, an ambush. You spin around frantically, raising your crosshairs at an empty wall, but there's no one there. Add to that the ambient noises that developers have baked into the map code to create atmosphere. In the silence of an empty server, when your nerves are stretched tight as a string, these random sounds generated by the code sound like a bolt being cocked, a grenade dropping, or the quiet footsteps of an enemy on the shift. The game constantly tricks your eardrums, making you believe that in this dead void, you're far from alone. This acoustic and technological chaos gave rise to a whole layer of gamer folklore. In the era of computer clubs and the early internet, forums were overflowing with stories about ghosts on empty servers. School kids swore they'd seen a player with no nickname who vanished when they approached, or heard footsteps on maps where not a single bot was running. Why did we so persistently search for a black cat in a dark room, knowing it wasn't there? The answer lies in a phenomenon that psychologists call apophenia, and in visual terms, pareidolia. It is the human mind's innate ability to seek structure, familiar patterns, and connections in random, chaotic data.
Our brain is the perfect survival simulator. For our ancestors on the savannah, it was safer to mistake the rustling of a bush in the wind for a tiger's leap than to ignore it and perish. We're programmed to see threats in uncertainty. When you launch a shooter game, your mind instantly switches to combat readiness mode. Stress hormones compel you to scan every millimeter of space. But when you find yourself in the absolute sensory deprivation of an empty server, your brain can't cope with the lack of information. It starts idling at extreme speeds. The pixelated, blurry graphics of the old engine are perfect for this. Because of the low-resolution textures and the angular, jagged shadows, any box along Dast's road in the fog looks like a crouching Special Forces soldier. A random bloodstain left over from the map's compilation is interpreted as a silhouette. Your own paranoia picks up a paintbrush and, on the blank, gray canvas of a dead game, paints your own personal, most terrifying nightmare.
Counter-Strike 1.6 empty maps are a unique monument to the digital age. These are spaces that possess an astonishing property. They exist only when someone is playing in them. They come to life only under a human gaze. But left without us, alone with their glitchy algorithms, baked-in shadows, and buggy echoes, they reveal their true, soulless, dead matrix. What terrifies us isn't that there's someone evil on the map. We're terrified by the realization that this world is empty to its very core. That beyond these walls, there is nothing but the engine's endless void.
And this subconscious existential horror on an empty server is perhaps the best proof of our humanity. Even in virtual worlds created for war and mutual destruction, what we fear most of all is being left in absolute, eternal solitude. We are terrified of the moment when the simulation ends and we have to click the exit button.